Hello, this is Mrs. Taylor, and I'm going to walk you through how to solve a multi-step linear equation. So the equation we have here is 6y minus 5 equals negative 3 all times 2y plus 1. And when I'm solving an equation, if I have parentheses and I have a number to distribute, like this negative 3, the first thing I want to do is distribute so I can get rid of those parentheses. And so distribute means multiply. Multiply negative 3 times 2y and negative 3 times 1. And so once you multiply that out, your resulting equation would be 6y minus 5 equals negative 6y minus 3. So then the next thing we need to do is we need to move our like terms to the same side of the equal sign. So on the left I have a variable term, 6y, and a minus 5, and I can choose where I want to start. So I can move this minus 5 to the right to be with the minus 3. I can move the 6y to the right to be with the negative 6y, or I can work in reverse. I can move the negative 6y to the left or the negative 3 to the left. It doesn't matter where I start. So I'm just going to choose to start with the minus 5, and to undo what's being done to solve the equation, if it's minus 5, then to undo that I would do the opposite, which would be to add 5. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And then once I add vertically and drop down everything else, my resulting equation would be 6y equals negative 6y plus 2. Now I need to move my variable terms together, and this negative 6y is on the opposite side of the 6y. So to move it, it's negative, I would need to do the opposite. It's negative 6y plus 2, so I would want to add positive 6y to both sides. And the resulting equation would be 12y equals 2. Whenever you're solving equations, you want to follow this order every time. You distribute to get rid of parentheses, add and subtract everything you can so that your variable terms are all on one side together and your constants, the ones without variables, like this 2, they're on the opposite side of the variable. And then once you've reached that point, the last step is to move the coefficient, which is the number in front of the variable, to the opposite side. And so if it's 12y, that means 12 times y. And so what I would do to move the 12 is to divide, the opposite of multiply. Once I've divided it out, I'm left with the y on the left and then 2/12 on the right, which is a fraction that can be reduced. I can do 2 divided by 12 in my calculator. If I do that, I get a non-terminating decimal. Even though the calculator rounds this 6 to a 7, I do know, just because I'm familiar with fractions, that this is actually a non-terminating decimal. And so if I were to round this to a decimal answer, it would be an estimate instead of the exact answer. So it's always better to provide the fraction as opposed to the decimal. And so my calculator will reduce the fraction for me if I don't remember how to do that. If I'm doing it in my head, the top and bottom of this fraction is both divisible by 2, so I divide both numbers by 2 and reduce it that way. However, I could press the math button on the calculator. Option 1 is convert to a fraction. So I would hit enter again, and it would give me the reduced fraction of 1/6. So my solution is y equals 1/6. And so I have my variable isolated, and I have a real answer, so I know I have solved this equation. The last thing I need to do, though, is make sure that it's actually the right answer. And so what I would do is I would check my answer by taking my value that I found and substituting it into the original equation and testing to see if I get a true statement. So I'm going to show you how to do that in the calculator. It's 6y minus 5 So I'd do 6, and then when I substitute a variable, it goes in parentheses. So 1/6 would be 1 divided by 6, and then close off those parentheses, minus 5. And then I'd also need to plug it into the right side, so -3 parentheses 2y. And instead of y, I'm going to sub in the 1/6, 1 divided by 6, and then plus 1, close off the parentheses, press enter, and I see that the left and the right, when I plug in this value, are both equal to -4. So I know my answer is correct. And whenever you're taking a test or a quiz, even in your homework, you always want to do a quick check to make sure that your solution is correct. And that's how you would solve a multi-step linear equation.